Well, US President Donald Trump has a powerful new European ally after Karol Nawrocki won Poland's presidential runoff. The nationalist conservative beat his liberal rival Rafał Trzaskowski by a razor-thin margin. The result is bad news for Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, whose domestic reform agenda is now in tatters. DW's Alexandra von Nahmen reports.
They opened their flower shops early, like every Monday morning, but seem to be still digesting the outcome of the election. The vendors here at the famous market halls in central Warsaw and their customers are divided in their assessment of Poland's president-elect, Karol Nawrocki.
I'm very happy. I'm really very happy.
And why?
For me, he seems like a normal human being, a decent person. And Trzaskowski? I don't like him.
Mr. Trzaskowski was not really authentic. He did not show his true face, and everyone can bluff.
I'm
not afraid of anything. I'm a pensioner, I have a quiet life. But what about our children and grandchildren? Mr. Nawrocki is a bandit for me, and I will tell everyone that.
Karol Nawrocki, a historian and former amateur boxer, is new to national politics. His campaign was overshadowed by scandals, including reports about his participation in football hooligan brawls and accusations of links to criminals. But that did not bother his base. As president, he is promising to uphold traditional Catholic values and has a hardline stance on migration. He is critical of the European Union and its policies, and although he has voiced support for Ukraine's defense against Russia, he doesn't want them in NATO. Nawrocki's victory is a major blow for the coalition government led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and it may very well prolong the current political deadlock in Poland, as the president has the authority to block legislation proposed by the government. The election result is also very likely to complicate Poland's position in Europe. With Nawrocki, a Eurosceptic will be residing in the presidential palace right behind me. A president whose role model is Donald Trump, and that could have big implications for the whole of Europe. Krzysztof Istebski, a policy expert in Warsaw, says.
Definitely Trump will have more to say in the Polish politics. The camp, the law and justice, the political camp of Karol Nawrocki will be also cooperating much more with Trump, saying that in 2 years they will take over the power. So I think it's a good empowering of the whole MAGA project in the Central and Eastern Europe as well.
For Poland, it means more political turbulence and a tough time for the centrist governing coalition, which will need to find a way out of the current political deadlock.
Well, as Alexandra saying there, Karol Nawrocki's win is a major blow to the pro-EU government of Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Mr. Tusk has addressed the nation, so let's bring in DW's Jack Parrack in Brussels for more. Welcome, Jack. What's the Polish Prime Minister been saying?
Well, he's announced a no-confidence vote in the Parliament in his ruling coalition. This is a clear reaction to this vote that was won by an opposition leader, Nawrocki, just by a really slim margin. So the reason that Donald Tusk is trying to push for this no-confidence vote that he says will be held in the earliest time is that he needs to prove that, at least within the Parliament, his legislative agenda to reform the country and to bring it closer into the European Union, that still has support from the four-party coalition that he is leading as Prime Minister. OK, so that's a big gamble. How much impact is Karol Nawrocki's win likely to have on the broad coalition that Donald Tusk assembled to govern Poland? It's going to have a big impact. It's really complicated for him because the president holds veto power over much of the legislative agenda, especially foreign policy issues. And Andrzej Duda, who's been president for the last few years, he has been using that veto and been making it really complicated for Donald Tusk, who really wants to push forward and bring the country, as I say, back into the sort of central fold of the European Union. And here in Brussels, that has been so welcomed. In February of 2024, after he was elected, the EU unlocked many of the funds that were blocked. 137 billion euros in EU funding for Poland was blocked under the previous far-right government that had attacked the judges in Poland, that had cracked down on free media, on freedom of the press, on NGOs, etc. And they very, very swiftly turned that around after Donald Tusk's election. He has found it quite difficult to get that legislative agenda over the line under the previous president, and he's going to find it much, much tougher under Nawrocki as well. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what he chooses to do should he win this no confidence vote that he's now called for the Polish parliament.
OK, so Karol Nawrocki was backed by the US president's MAGA movement. How much influence is that likely to have on Polish politics?
It's a big, big influence, to be honest. When you see if Donald Trump supports those particular candidates, if that movement gets involved, it creates a lot of noise, especially online. But it's not only Donald Trump that has been a big supporter, or the MAGA movement at least, has been a big supporter of Karol Nawrocki, but also other right-wing and far-right politicians in the European Union. We saw the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban celebrate his win this morning. We saw that because, and what Viktor Orban said is that this is great for the Visegrad group. So these are the 4 countries in the east of Europe that Hungary sort of leads and Viktor Orban sort of leads, which try and sort of club together to take on what they see as the sort of overlords here in Brussels. And what you're seeing is Viktor Orban not only doing that himself, but he always had Poland as his sort of side country when the Law and Justice Party were in power in Poland. And he's lost that ally since Donald Tusk has come back into power as the Prime Minister. Now what he has is a vetoing president, and those countries potentially can club together. This is broader than just Europe, though. As you say, the MAGA movement has really backed this candidate and this presidency now of Karol Nawrocki. Excuse me.
Thanks, Jack. DW's Jack Parrack in Brussels. Skora is a political consultant and visiting researcher at the European Policy Centre in Brussels, where she focuses on populism and democracy. Welcome to DW. Let's start with the news that Poland's Prime Minister says he will call a vote of confidence in response to the presidential election result. Can you see the thinking behind that?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. I think it's yet another very interesting twist of events after the result of a presidential election in Poland last night. After the polling stations closed, everybody believed that it was Rafał Trzaskowski who won the elections. Actually, it's Karol Nawrocki who is the president-elect. And now this. I believe that Donald Tusk tries to prove that his government still has support and is able to govern. And I was thinking about this as choosing a strategy either of Pedro Sanchez, who was which ended up in calling snap elections to confirm the public support for his government, or maybe Olaf Scholz to control damage by calling snap elections in view of losing popularity of the government. Of course, the vote of confidence is not yet snap elections. The vote of confidence is rather sending a signal to the society that the cabinet of Tusk still has the parliamentary majority, and that it's still able to keep on legislating. However, we also have to think about a possible outcome being snap elections.
OK, so we'll put a pin on that one, in that one for now, and look at this election, this presidential election, which was very close, just over 50% of voters backing Nawrocki. What does such a close decision tell us about the state of Polish society and politics?
Well, next to this very narrow margin that brought victory to Karol Nawrocki, it's also worth noticing that the election, the voter turnout was very high. It was almost 72%, which in the Polish reality is very high, highest historical turnout for presidential elections. And that feeds into first conclusion, namely that there is an extreme polarization. In the Polish society, the difference between two candidates was somewhere around 1.5%, 370,000 votes, more or less. But this also shows that there is a shift to the right, because Karol Nawrocki managed to mobilize the voters who in the first round of the presidential elections voted for new right, far right, anti-establishment candidates, and who in the second round decided to cast their vote in favor of candidates supported by law and justice. I would say that next to the duopoly between law and justice and the civic platform, we can see this duopoly actually breaking, and there is a new kid on the block being the new right, which apparently became a kingmaker in this election.
OK, so Polish politics just got even more interesting and exciting. What does Karol Nawrocki want? What was his campaign platform?
Oh, well, Karol Nawrocki's campaign main message was not to allow Rafał Trzaskowski to win and allow Donald Tusk a complete power grab over the country. This actually was a message very much pronounced by both the candidate and the political camp supporting him. But other than that, Karol Nawrocki was speaking of, for example, worldview issues. He pledged to defend Christian values. He is more on the conservative side, against LGBT rights, against open access to abortion. He was also very much criticizing the chaos in the judiciary, actually accusing the incumbent government of only deepening the crisis in the Polish judiciary and misfunctioning of the court system. He also got presented himself as a quite a Eurosceptic candidate, pledging for Poland to withdraw from some key European policies like the Green New Deal, like the Migration Pact, no to Eurozone. So one could say that this is actually in line with the party supporting him. He, however, stressed the support for NATO spending and defense spending.
I mean, well, I'm seeing a lot of similarities in various bits of what you said there to other right-wing European leaders like Hungary's Viktor Orban. We also had the French far-right leader Jordan Bardella, amongst others, congratulating him on this victory. And, of course, he was very much backed in the United States by MAGA. The thing of this is, though, the post of president in Poland is supposedly largely ceremonial, yet this is all starting to feel very consequential.
Well, yes and no. Actually, you're right. The competences of the president in the Polish political system are less than the competences of a prime minister when it comes to executive. Nevertheless, the president can be a spoiler and can sabotage or make the life of a government difficult, because a signature of the president is necessary to put bills into rights. In other words, he plays an important role in a legislative process. And that role was used and abused by Andrzej Duda, for example, in the past, who was either vetoing draft bills proposed by the parliament or sending them to the Constitutional Tribunal for review.
Right.
But you're right that we see this emergence of a family of political parties representing certain values, both in Europe and in the United States. It's not a surprise that CPAC also stopped over in Poland before going to Hungary to express the support for Nawrocki, and we have to understand that such developments at national level will have also international consequences.
But can we expect unanimity between President and Prime Minister on things like support for Ukraine and indeed NATO with Russia just over there and looking at Poland with envious eyes?
Well, this is quite peculiar in Poland that there is the defense policy or the perception of Russia is not that much of a polarizing issue. I think there is quite a consensus that the major threat for Poland comes from the east. Nevertheless, there are differences how to approach this threat and about attitude towards Ukraine. And Karol Nawrocki was very clear about not willing Ukraine to access NATO. And also he is not willing to send Polish troops to Ukraine. I think his optics on securing Poland or building a Polish defense strategy is rather vested in the United States, as opposed to the Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who rather is orientated towards European solutions, so European cooperation, European sovereignty. So in this area, I would expect some discord and them not speaking one voice. This is a risk. There are definitely deep differences between the Prime Minister and the President in Poland right now, and the President does represent the country abroad, even if symbolically.
Right.
But we will definitely see this dissonance.
We covered a lot of ground there. Thank you so much for your time and expertise, Maria Skora from the European Policy Centre.
Thank you so much.